All right, so lesson 3 is about rotations. It's the third kind of transformation. And remember, rotations are when things are turning, okay? So we're going to be learning about the center of rotation and then the symbols that show us what's happening, okay? One of the things you do need to remember is if something is turning clockwise, okay, that's going to the right, just like a normal clock. And then if something's going counterclockwise, so that means it's going to the left in the opposite direction a normal clock would move. Okay. Okay. So we want to rotate a figure about a point. Okay. So a rotation is a transformation in which a figure is rotated or turned about a fixed point. The center of rotation is that fixed point. A rotation does not change the size or shape of the figure. Okay, so the pre-image and the new image are congruent. They're equal in size and shape. They're just in a different location. All right, so if you take a look at this example, you can see, right, one figure was rotated and became the new figure. They're still the same size and shape. They just moved locations. Okay. All right, so it says rectangle ABCD has vertices of the following, okay, to represent the bed in Jackson's room. Graph the figure. Okay, so let's graph it. So we have negative 7, 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, so here's A. B is at negative 7, 1. Then we have negative 2, 1. And negative 2, 4. Okay, so there is Jackson's bed. Now it says to rotate the image clockwise. We want to rotate it clockwise at 90 degrees about C. Okay, so excuse me. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to trace my image on my parchment paper. Okay, we have A, B, C, and D. Okay, and then it says to rotate it at point C. So I'm going to put my pen right at point C, and I'm going to rotate my paper 90 degrees. Okay, and it's 90 degrees because it made a nice little square, right? So this is now my new image right here. Okay, so if I lift my paper slightly, C is still in its normal spot, but now B is up here. So there's B prime, right? This is C prime. A is right here, and D is right there. Okay, so I connect my dots, and here's my new image. Okay, and then of course it wants us to write down what those new points are. All right, so A prime is now at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. B prime is at negative 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. C prime stayed the same at negative 2, 1. And D prime is at 1, 1. Okay. Now, of course, we don't, you're not going to always have parchment paper, especially at home. You probably don't have that. So we're going to use the rules to help us figure out where our points will be. Okay. So if you are turning 90 degrees clockwise, okay, about the origin, okay, and the origin, remember, is 0, 0, then this is going to be your symbol, okay? Your X and your Y are going to flip spots, and then your X is going to become the opposite, okay? So switch spots, X becomes opposite, okay? If they are rotating 180 degrees, so that's like a straight line, then they don't switch spots, but they both become opposites. So both X and Y become opposite. All right, and then if we go 270 degrees, so we're almost to a full circle, they switch spots again, but this time Y becomes opposite. Okay, so you do need to think about this. And then if you're going in the opposite direction in counterclockwise, you'd have these same type of rules, just opposite of what you think, okay? So like for this one, if I rotate it counterclockwise, okay? See how I went to the left, but I'm only going 90 degrees. So not only is this 270 degrees rotation clockwise, it's also 90 degrees counterclockwise. Okay, look at this one, right? If I take the original, here's 90, here's 180, and there's 270. So the 90 degrees here, this is clockwise, or 270 counterclockwise. Okay. If I take my original, remember they wanted us to go clockwise here, so 90, 180, okay, counterclockwise 90, 180. So no matter which direction you go, 180 gets you to the same spot. So this is clockwise and counterclockwise, no matter which way you go. Okay. So let's look at a couple more examples. So triangle X, Y, and Z has these vertices. So let's graph that. So we have 3, -1, 5, -4, and 1, -5. Okay, that's your pre-image. And we're going to use those same points for the second one. So I'm just going to graph that real quick. All right, so now let's go back to number 1 and see what does it tell us to do. It tells us to go 270 degrees counterclockwise about the vertex, X. Okay, so these are a little bit harder because you don't have parchment paper at home. Maybe you do, okay? But so you draw the image. So here's X, here's Y, here's Z. Now, the fun thing about parchment paper is if you put some ink on both sides, then when you turn it, you can trace over it and it'll do that. So it says to go counterclockwise 270, okay? So there's 1, 2, 3. See how it drew it for me? All right, so here's your x and your x prime. Here's your y prime, and here's your z prime. Okay? Now, it probably got off a little bit. So we have that our x prime stayed the same. Our x stayed the same. Our y prime is now at 1, 1, -4, and our z prime is at 1, 2, -2, -1. Okay. Well, like I said, those are a little bit harder to do than going about the origin. So here, we're going about the origin. So remember our rules about the origin. 180-degree clockwise gives us -x and -y. Okay. So our x prime needs to turn negative. So 3 becomes -3, -1 becomes +1 because that's the opposite. Okay, y prime, 5 becomes -5, -4 becomes +4. And z prime, 1 becomes -1, and -5 becomes +5. So now we're ready to graph those. Okay, so -3, 1, -5, 4, and -1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And there's your new image. Make sure, turn this back to here, right? Make sure that you have these written down somewhere. These rules will help you, and they might be on your quiz.